I say we digitize the back offices of enterprise wealth management firms, but the reality, we only digitize part of the back office of enterprise wealth management firms. So the question for me then, in running Docupace for the past year, is, well, do we change the statement or do we change what we do? And in my mind, we need to change what we do rather than change the statement.
When he was president of wealth management firm First Global, David Knoch set a strategic direction that was built around technology solutions that drove efficiency and scale. Now, after taking over as CEO of leading workflow and document management vendor Docupace, he's starting the process of building a back-office powerhouse by acquiring Giacomo, a provider of compliance, surveillance, and advisor compensation software. I spoke to David about the reasons behind their first M&A deal, his 5 megatrends in financial services, and a whole lot more on this episode of the Wealth Tech Today podcast. Come on in, sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 95 of the Wealth Tech Today podcast. I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, the founder and CEO of Ezra Group Consulting. We help fintech vendors and enterprise wealth management firms make better business and technology decisions. Check us out at ezragroupllc.com. This podcast features interviews, news, and analysis on the trends and best practices all about wealth management technology. A couple housekeeping tasks before we proceed. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or any other area, so you don't miss any future episodes. A quick shout out to one of our sponsors, the Invest in Others Charitable Foundation. You can find them at investinothers.org. And now let's get this interview on the road. And I'm happy to introduce on this episode of the Wealth Tech Today podcast, my guest, David Knoch, CEO of Docupace. Hey, David, welcome.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me here today.
I'm glad you can be here. And you are calling in from lovely Dallas area, Texas. It's some place I really like to, I really like, even though I hate the football team there. I really love the people and the area of Dallas.
Perfect. Well, I don't like the football team either, for what it's worth. So
all right.
The people in the area are great.
We're on the same page. Love it.
We might not be. As a New England Patriots fan, you and I may not be on the same page, but
really, no. Surprisingly, not to digress from wealth tech into football. I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm happy. The Eagles don't play the Patriots very often, although when we do, I'm happy when we win. But I'm also a Rutgers fan, having gone to Rutgers University. And Bill Belichick has a soft spot in his heart for Rutgers players for some reason. I don't know why.
Yep. That's good. Both my in-laws are Rutgers grads. So
there you go. I knew I liked you.
Exactly.
Special thing. Good. So moving off of football talk, let's talk wealth tech. So can you give us 30-second elevator pitch for Docupace?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Greg. So, Docupace is financial technology that helps enterprise wealth management firms digitize their back offices. So the goal of Docupace is to make sure that we take friction out of the process for wealth management. We want to make sure that the promise of financial planning becomes the promise of financial planning well executed. So we help firms onboard new clients, right? Convert them from prospects to new clients, onboard them, move all the documents, data, digital signatures, everything through, smart, comprehensive, robust workflows, integrate all those workflows to their partners of choice, and then ultimately leave the documents and data at rest in an SEC compliant document storage facility.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found in learning more about Docupace, and this is my job to know different companies, but for a long time, I just thought of Docupace as being purely document managed, document storage. And when you mentioned financial planning well executed, there's so much more, and there's so much more in terms of the workflow processes. Can you talk a little bit about how that and how you guys have built that over the years to more of an ecosystem and infrastructure that firms can build their back office off of?
Yeah, so it's a great point. I think you may know, but I actually started off as a Docupace client. So my last firm, we used Docupace for about a decade. We were one of the early adopters. And in fact, we adopted Docupace as document management, right? We started off with exactly the profile that you described. The business built itself out over time. So document management, document storage, which was really critical to our business and to our clients' business, kind of operate it well and integrate, became an opportunity for, as you described, to build a larger financial ecosystem. So, we got into the customer onboarding process because, frankly, to do document management, a lot of it does start with new account opening. We also do it for account maintenance and other activities as well. But in order to be able to create this comprehensive platform, starting at the beginning of prospect conversion, which is really where a lot of our core work began, that became a huge part of what we did. So we got into the forms filling and new account opening processes, got deeper integrations with custodians and TAMPs and CRM providers. And we can actually create today, and we had this experience in our last firm, a pretty interestingly well integrated ecosystem between TAMPs, CRMs, custodians, and to create one integrated experience, really, no matter how many providers a firm has in each one of those major categories. And we do it for a lot of other financial technology as well, but those are pretty uniform. So, we've actually broadened that out, frankly. I mean, one of the solutions that we provide, we do the most digital onboarding of new financial advisors or financial advisors to new firms, because if we can onboard one customer or one client at a time, we can onboard one financial advisor at a time. So we're the largest provider of digital financial advisor transitions in the industry today, just as a result of that extension. And part of our roadmap, and we'll probably talk about this later, is, well, if we can do it for one advisor at a time, we're looking at ways to be able to do it one firm at a time, right? To be able to take that onboarding and that scale that we've got and really bring it to more firms and create, solve for larger problems.
You had mentioned, I want to talk about your 5 mega trends that you're seeing in financial services. Can you explain what they are and how you see them impacting the industry?
For sure. Yeah, there's, from our perspective, there's 5 mega trends that are relevant, at least, to Docupace and how we run. I guess I'd be remiss in saying there's probably more trends than this sort of happening financial services industry wide. These are, I think particularly focused on their implication on financial technology firms like ours. The first one that's on that list is the continuing trend of consolidation. I mean, I think consolidation for the industry is showing up in 2 ways. The first one, quite clearly, is consolidation of wealth management practices. That's part of the reason I just made the comment. Well, if we can solve for onboarding one client at a time, and we can solve for onboarding one financial advisor at a time, how do we think about solving for onboarding one firm at a time, right? So as consolidation continues to happen, we've got some interesting projects happening right now that are helping scale some of that consolidation activity for some of our clients and prospects. I also think consolidations, particularly, I think consolidation is starting to show up in the world of financial technology firms, right? So our friend Mr. Kitz's fintech map's got a lot of logos on it, right? And there's a lot of those logos in the blue emerging category, a lot more in that blue category than we probably would have seen if we looked at that fintech map a year ago or a year before. So, there's certainly a proliferation of, very specialized providers, which I think is great for the industry, but there's a reckoning of that, I think, that's ahead of us. And some might say there's a reckoning of that's here with us today. We are starting to see, at least I think, an acceleration of consolidation in the financial technology space. And in our perspective, there's probably an opportunity. We do think there's an opportunity for some of the best of breed specific solution providers like Docupace to be able to come together with other best of breed specific solution providers to create even better, more robust solution for the financial services industry. So I think the next big wave of consolidation is probably coming in the fintech space, if it's not here already. The second one, which I think is relevant to the financial services industry, and I think it's driving a lot of the trends that are happening inside wealth management firms, as well as how financial technology firms serve them. It's what I describe as the continued desire for self-authoring, right? So this self-authoring trend, I believe, is what's driving wirehouse advisors to move to independent channels. It's that self-authoring trend that's causing those independent financial advisors to drop Series 7s and start their own registered investment advisors. It's this self-authoring trend that's causing the proliferation of very specific solutions in financial technology. I mean, everybody kind of wants a very individualized and personalized experience kind of under their control. while everybody's very interested in best practices, a lot of there's this very strong desire for being able to run my business my way. And I think financial technology providers are sort of well situated to try to scale that. It's one of the reasons why, and we'll talk about, probably, I would assume you will talk about this in a little bit, but it's one of the reasons why we think Docupace in particular can add value for the independent RIA community, because self-authoring tends to show up in that community, right, as custodial proliferation, right? We want to make sure that we can, provide custodial choice for ourselves and for our clients. And, there's no reason why custodial proliferation should create a bad operations process. We can give wealth management firms, we can give clients, back offices, the opportunity to have one experience, regardless of how many different custodians they have. So rather than trying to, I think, stop the self-authoring trend or caution firms around the self-authoring trend, I guess I would want to see particularly financial technology providers to lean into it and just ask the question, well, how do we scale self-authoring? Not how do we make self-authoring go away? The
So
other
David,
one
let me
that's
jump in
out,
before you go on.
yeah, for
You already
sure.
hit two. I would be remiss if I didn't mention your first trend, the acceleration of consolidation. And you talked about best of breed providers coming together. I want to talk about your recent announcement that you're coming together with another provider called Giacomo. Do you want to talk about that acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're right. We just announced the acquisition of Giacomo. We're really impressed with the team at Giacomo. Really impressed with their technology as well. The Giacomo technology does two things for wealth management firms. One, it scales their compensation processes, so it lets them calculate and pay commissions in a pretty open architecture and robust way. One of the nice things about the platform is it can handle any method of paying financial advisors. The second thing is, because so much data is involved in the advisor compensation process, the firm's actually got a really, really robust platform for surveillance and compliance, which we're really interested in, being able to bring that capability out to our clients. I will say, from our perspective, if I sort of divide the back office world, so I go back to the statement I made. You asked me for my elevator speech around Docupace. I say we digitize the back offices of enterprise wealth management firms, but the reality, Craig, is we only digitize part of the back office of enterprise wealth management firms. So the question for me then, in running Docupace for the past 11 months or 12 months, about a year, is, well, do we change the statement or do we change what we do? And in my mind, we change what we do rather than change the statement. If I think back to my prior life running a pretty large wealth management practice, we had a great Docupace relationship, but I also had a relationship with Envestnet. I had a relationship with Protogen. I had a relationship with M&O, BRAC. I had all these other technology providers that were part of the back office. And the reality is, my business would have been better served by consolidating some of those together into a single back office and financial advisor experience. Our back office had Docupace open all day long. Our field, particularly wealth management assistants, had Docupace open all day long. Well, what if they could get their compliance activities conducted in that platform? What if they could get their advisor compensation activities conducted or reported on within that platform, right? It just makes their life considerably easier by having this consolidated platform. And with the Giacomo acquisition, we can start to deliver that. Now, there's more capabilities that I think we could deliver as part of this integrated back office experience, and we're going to go down that path. But being able to bring those capabilities to our clients. I mean, listen, today we've got common customers with Giacomo that want integrations. We want to deliver that integration, but ultimately really want to go deeper and try to approach the market together, solving for what I describe as financial planning well executed, by really focusing on the back office itself and trying to deliver a really robust experience, well integrated with data, one platform for the people that we're privileged to serve. And I'll come back to Giacomo a little bit probably as we go through the conversation today. But that's at a high level, that's the thesis and the main focus for us. We're really excited. Again, I mentioned the team over there is just so smart. They know the technology so well. They know how to solve for these wealth management challenges incredibly well. So that's a big part of the reason why we're so excited. Not just the tech, but the people.
one thing I'm seeing with a lot of mergers or acquisition announcements in our industry is that they're driven more by data than by tech. And do you see that in terms of what Giacomo has? You mentioned that their data, compensation data, payout data, which feeds surveillance and compliance. So how does their access to data, their ability to manage data, having a data strategy and data, be able to assess other firms' data, how does it help drive your vision for how Docupace is going to digitize the back offices?
Yeah, so this is a really, this is a really cool point for us, we think. Docupace today already has a ton of data related to new account opening processes, right? So we've got all the new account opening, all the maintenance, like we've got a whole ton of data already related to that. And we've got a lot of financial advisors using the platform. With Giacomo, it goes a little level deeper, right? That new account opening data turns into transactional data because the business is processing all the data feeds from DST and Dazzle and custodians, and right, it has all these data sources integrated into it to be able to do post-trade surveillance as well as pay compensation. So the place where I believe that we need to focus on data, at least initially, and this work is actually underway at Docupace. If I go back to the statement that I made about Docupace, one of Docupace's core purpose for us is to make financial planning become financial planning well executed. What I think we have the opportunity to do is to be able to create a lot more transparency into how well functioning a wealth management back office actually is. So Craig, if you're trying to open new accounts, either for yourself or for your clients or on behalf of financial advisors, you're probably going to want to know, like, how well am I doing this? Am I opening them fast enough? My NIGA rates low enough? Do we have bottlenecks in our process, right? You're going to want to, you'll probably be curious about some combination of how well optimized is my back office and how competitive is it? And I actually think Docupace is in a really interesting position to be able to provide that type of insight to the firms that we serve. So between the data that we've got at Docupace, between the data that we'll have with Giacomo, particularly if we end up with the ability to aggregate and anonymize that data and report it back to firms as performance benchmarking, ultimately on a real-time basis, I think we can make a huge change in how clients are served by the financial services industry. So today, I don't know that back offices are used by financial advisors or the IBD recruiters or RIA financial advisors. I don't know if the back offices are used as a point of competitive differentiation. And I think we can change that. I think by creating transparency and back office improvement through that transparency, I think we can start to create a competitive environment for the back office. I think back office people become the heroes of the next decade if we do this well, right? So can you imagine for a minute, if you're the person running the back office at a IBD or a large RIA that's centralized back office processing, and all of a sudden you find out that you're opening new accounts 5 times faster than the average IBD, like, what's the first thing you're going to do? Well, you're going to run to your recruiting department and say, start telling everybody this. If they've got pain with the back office or the operations, tell them to come here. I can prove how good we are. And I think that makes, when I say financial planning well executed, I actually think we can really do a good job with data on bringing that well executed piece to life, both through optimization as well as through transparency of just how well back offices are doing. Long answer to the question, but I think data is critical for delivering that.
So let's get back to your 5 megatrends. See, we did the first 2. So what's your third megatrend that you're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, I think regulatory compliance, not surprisingly, is a big part of it. And, I think in particular, regulatory compliance has kind of been the thing that's always been with us. And I don't know that, administrations frankly changed the level of regulatory compliance in a really big way. I think there may be some slight ebbs and flows to it, but, regulatory compliance is something that sort of always lives in the forefront of, RIAs, IBDs, insurance firms. Like, it's something they spend a lot of time and dollars on. And I think, because regulatory compliance, most people would likely say continues to increase in some way. I think what ends up being sacrificed in favor of regulatory compliance is innovation. It just sucks away a lot of the productive sort of discretionary capacity inside wealth management firms. And it's part of the reason why I think you've got such a proliferation of financial technology providers, because firms just can't do it themselves, right? Regulatory compliance, I think in no small part, is part of the reason why firms are trying to figure out how to get away from legacy homegrown enterprise technology. Like technology debt amasses pretty quickly if all of your available resources are being dedicated to solving the next new regulatory compliance concern that you've got. And that doesn't matter if you're an IBD, it doesn't matter if you're an RIA, like they've all got to deal with how do you deal with compliance in a way that is not just, checking the boxes, but actually creating a business that's sort of worthy of client service and can stand out separately and different from everybody else. Again, innovation gets sacrificed when regulatory compliance activities are too high. So good news is firms like Docupace and others will solve that for people.
Hey, it's Craig. I want to take a quick break from this episode to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. Sebastian Strong is a 501c3 nonprofit whose goal is to raise awareness about childhood cancer and fund research for less toxic, more targeted treatments and cures. The charity was founded in 2017 by the parents of 16-year-old Sebastian Ortiz after he lost his year-long battle with a rare form of childhood sarcoma. Sebastian Strong focuses on funding innovative research that has the potential to revolutionize cancer treatment for children. Cancer is the number one cause of death by disease among children, yet less than 4% of the National Cancer Institute's budget is allocated to childhood cancer. Sebastian Strong has partnered with leading cancer research institutions around the country and actively collaborates with other childhood cancer foundations that support their one key belief that kids deserve better treatments, better outcomes, and better lives. Please help the Sebastian Strong Foundation to continue their mission by making a donation, spreading the word about beating childhood cancer, or getting involved. You can do that by visiting their website at sebastianstrong.org. That's Sebastian, SEBASTIAN, STRONG.org. You can also follow them on Instagram and Twitter at SebsStrong, that's SEBSSTRONG, or on Facebook at Sebastian Strong. Yeah, regulatory is driving a lot of spending in the industry.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, you can even pushes out some other spending because nobody wants to get dinged by the SEC or the other regulatory bodies that they miss something. So they're willing to spend extra on a regulatory piece of software that's going to hopefully give them a report that'll make the regulators happy versus buying something that might generate more revenue or reduce costs somewhere else.
Well, I mean, and to that point, right, last year, Docupace, delivered a solution in the marketplace called Tracker BI, and it was basically a way for firms to be able to satisfy their Reg BI compliance. And the interesting part about Tracker BI is that, satisfying Reg BI, the Form CRS delivery requirement, solving for that was really just a use case for the platform. It was not the platform. What we've got now is a highly auditable and trackable customer communication platform that we just happen to use for Form CRS delivery. So I go back to, that use case I mentioned to be able to solve for the consolidation efforts of large enterprise wealth management firms. What you're finding is that Docupace for those engagements are actually combining together this core platform, onboarding, document management, workflow, storage, right? The core Docupace platform with our advisor transitions platform with our tracker platform. That bringing those together creates a scenario where we can gather data, communicate with clients, track that communication, integrate it with account opening processes, move it through to custodians, leave the documents at rest. That by bringing together these three tools we have, we can actually solve some pretty large enterprise data conversion projects. And we've actually got two of them kind of underway right now, which is fascinating for me.
I'm sure. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the fourth mega trend.
Yeah, the fourth one is just, I won't spend a ton of time on it, but I think it's relevant to the clients that we serve and relevant, I think, to a lot of the clients that the financial service industry serve, and that's low interest rates. It just has such a fundamental impact on the ability of firms to spend. I think, as so much of, particularly the independent wealth management community, so much of the revenue is tied to interest rates that, when interest rates are low, profitability comes down, the ability to retire technology debt comes down, the ability to spend on the next level of, of what firms need to do to, create a better client experience or execute well comes down. And it's a it's a headwind, I think, for trying to solve for some of the challenges in the industry. Again, just because it's such a big part of the buyer's revenue source. So not a lot financial technology firms can necessarily do about it per se, but it is a mega trend that changes the ability for, I think the people we're going after to try to help, their ability to spend. And last one, I guess I'll mention, is what I see as a persistent consumer demand, and it's really not just in financial services, but persistent consumer demand for more simplicity and more transparency. We want to hire people who make our lives easier. And that's not just in the financial services industry, that's everywhere. I mean, we want people to make the complex easy for us. And financial planning, and particularly financial planning and incredibly complex, as right? I mean, we want to believe that this is something that's really easy, but it isn't, right? I mean, it may seem easy to the client, and that's the goal, right? To be able to take these complex topics and bring them down to a really simple, easy to understand process. And I think financial technology shaping the customer experience, and I think financial technology shaping customer execution is a big part of creating simplicity. The other thing is clients are, I think, sort of sick of the opacity in any of their relationships. I mean, trust in part comes from transparency. And I think clients have a demand for transparency. They're just not going to, they're just not going to accept some of the opacity that exists in the financial services industry. I mean, I think not an insignificant part of what's driving clients and advisors away from commissionable models into fiduciary or fee-based models is not just the statement around fiduciary versus suitability, but what that portends in the client relationship, right? It's a drive for transparency as much as anything, because customers will understand transparency more than they will a statement around fiduciary versus suitability, right? I mean, transparency, at least in part, is what resonates with them. And I think we've got to continue to drive in financial technology firms for being able to make things easy. I mean, if you were to look inside under the covers of Docupace, it's an incredibly complex platform. Like it can do, it can almost do anything for anybody for any reason. But by the time a financial advisor or wealth management assistant experiences it, I mean, it's ultimately a reasonably simple platform for what it does. And that's the goal, is to make this incredibly complex workflow, integration, data gathering, form filling process to be something that's just button clicks, which is great. I will say, for what it's worth, I do think those 5 trends are occurring in sort of a fundamental shift that I've kind of touched on a little bit. But, I do think the past decade or so of financial technology spend and focus has really been on the client experience. And I'd actually say it's more than perception is almost a better statement than experience. But it's the reason why costs have come down and financial planning has become the norm, not the exception. It's the reason why UIs are as robust as they are. It's the reason why model management shows up the way it does. I mean, there's this, if you think about a decade ago, what the client and financial advisor experience looked like, it's like radically different today. And it's been really good for clients and advisors and the back offices to some degree. What firms like Docupace recognize, and I think others would see it as well, is what's behind that is not nearly as well put together, right? I mean, that execution is still challenging. Like you'd be shocked, right? So I'll give you my sort of worst case example. So, the Docupace platform doesn't need forms or signatures at all in order to be able to open new accounts. I mean, we can have everything be data and have that, that data be, sort of certified or authorized digitally. So we don't need to have any documents or data. But there are cases where we take fully digital, we turn it into a digital form, we turn the digital form into a PDF, and then we fax the PDF to a custodian to open an account. Like, it couldn't be more arcane than that, right? So you start on the front end with this sort of like what I would say is this beautiful sort of digital experience, and you turn it into a fax because that's the way the industry still operates. And that's not financial planning well executed, right? It's the reason why financial, clients were like, well, why'd you get my name wrong? Or why does this account take too long? Or why didn't you do this TOA? And why this takes, like, the process for financial advisor and clients today, I don't think industry wide reinforces the way it could the good work that's happening through the financial planning process. And it doesn't cause clients to want to come back and do more. So a financial advisor builds a beautiful financial plan, delivers it to the client. The client's hopes, dreams, and aspirations have come true in this document, and it goes into implementation and it takes too long and mistakes get made. When that client, has a kid and needs to start saving for a 529, are they ready to call the financial advisor? When, it's time for retirement, do you try to figure out how to do some of this yourself before calling your financial advisor because those experiences just didn't go well? When I say financial planning well executed, I want to take that friction out of the financial planning process and make people feel as good 2 years later, 3 years later, a decade later about their financial plan as they did on day one. And I think we play a role in delivering that.
You mentioned the behind the scenes, and I always think that's the dirty little secret that we all know about what goes on behind with the client, even what the advisor doesn't see necessarily.
Correct.
Is usually often such a mess. And it goes back to your regulatory compliance comment about tech debt, and firms build up tech debt over many years, oftentimes through multiple mergers, and nobody wants to address it because it's easier to throw bodies at a problem than to bring in new systems, have to spend all that money. So you wind up with what we call the squirrels in the background running the circles to get things done. And, they said faxing stuff that because the custodians don't have a digital process as well. So you're kind of bridging the gap between multiple layers of bad technology.
Yeah. I mean, it's satisfying and dissatisfying. Like we make the process better, but we know how much better the process could be than it is today. Right. I will say something that I don't think gets paid enough attention to inside of all this trending is adoption. So I just think about us. Like I've got 90,000. We've probably got almost 90,000 advisors registered to use the platform. About a quarter of America's financial advisors are registered Docupace users. But I don't have that many monthly active users in the platform. All right, I probably get 2/3 of that are monthly active users. Or I think back to my time at First Global. I could deliver a ton of great technology to financial advisors, and I think we did. But only about 50% of them actually used it. Right. So, and the problem with this, I think for the industry, and I don't know how much we've solved for this, is I think the chasm between technology haves and have nots is getting really, really wide to the point where, I don't know how wealth management firms that are serving multiple financial advisors viably create a digital strategy when they can't attach the digital strategy to enough of their financial advisors. I don't know how financial advisors who have fallen behind in technology adoption, and a lot of them have, I don't know at this point how they catch up. And I don't know how you start to drive in the industry for standardization and process and a great client experience when not enough people will attach themselves to it. Like I think there's a big fundamental challenge. It just comes from adoption. Like we can build beautiful stuff all day long, but if financial advisors and wealth management assistants just kind of want to keep doing business the way they've always done it because they're used to it, I do think that's a legitimate and challenging headwind for the industry as a whole. And I don't know that any of us really know how to solve for that in a big way. I definitely don't. Not yet anyway.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work. We work with some of the top 10 broker dealers in the country, and they had the same issue that they can't get 100% adoption unless they force the advisors to do it by threatening not to pay them. Like, we won't pay you unless you do this. Then they get adoption.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the advisors do what they want because they do the things the way they've always done it. And it's very difficult to prove to them that investing the time and effort to learn a new piece of tech or change the way you're doing things will improve, because they don't see that payoff down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. So, back to this, bigger fundamental shift I described around execution. This is so Docupace, we've sort of decided that in order to really be able to step into this, sort of focus on execution, which I think will be the next decade, or, I think we've got to really decide like who are the deep partners for us. And then after that, what do we want to do to incorporate the capabilities that aren't in those deep partnerships? What do we do to incorporate those capabilities into the Docupace platform? So we'd say, CRM providers, financial planning, software, the platform TAMPs, and the custodians are really critical because they're universally adopted, no matter if you're an RIA, an IBD, a financial advisor affiliated with an insurance firm. Like you're probably going to have a CRM platform, financial planning platform, a TAMP you're working with, and at least one custodian. Like it's part of it's going to be a universal ecosystem. And I think, Docupace can play a pretty big role in unifying the experience together across that. But it opens up the question, well, for everything else that's in the back office, that's not those four things. How can Docupace play a bigger role? And that's what drives us to say, well, again, what about advisor compensation, or what about compliance, or what about money movement or securities movement, or what about reporting, or what about data warehousing? Like there's so many other components that are part of the back office that are not solved by CRM, financial planning, platform TAMPs, or custodians that I think we can play a pretty big role in. And to the extent that we'll continue to be acquisitive, and I suspect we will, we're going to ask the question, how do we create a great experience for the clients we're privileged to serve and consolidate their back office experiences together?
Can you give us just a 2-minute overview of how you got to where you are now? So you've been CEO of Docupace for a little over a year. Congratulations. But
thank you.
You came from First Global, where you were there for over 18 years. So how did that experience set you up for what you're doing now? And how does that influence how you run Docupace?
Yeah. So, I guess I'll focus on a couple of things there. One, I spent a lot of time there, and a lot of my time at First Global, at least, for the middle part of my career there, was really, building our investment advisory platforms. And I got a lot of focus on technology during that time. And it started pretty simply, which is, trying to figure out how to scale our investment advisory platform in a meaningful way for our financial advisors. So we actually built a turnkey asset management platform at First Global in 2003. So we built, a model management platform, portfolio accounting system, reporting, billing, trading, customer portal, financial advisor portal. Like we had all of this, built out. Like we built it in 2003, released it in 2004, and I was pretty key in developing and releasing that. And as a result, we turned that business into, by the time that we sold it to Blue Cora and we merged with HG Vest to become a Vantax, about a quarter of our revenue was coming from our home office TAMP, which is unheard of. Like for most people, it's 3%. For us, it was 30%. Home office TAMP was on the verge of being the biggest advisory platform at First Global, right? And this is a nearly $20 billion, platform. So, I got to know a lot about technology, scale, automation, process, serving financial advisors through that experience of building out that platform. Along that journey, we tried to, we had a belief that, part of our service experience to financial advisors was creating a frictionless back office. Like the financial advisor experience for us was tantamount, particularly in serving CPA firms, as we did at First Global. Those relationships that the CPAs had were decades in the making prior to them becoming wealth management clients. And operational service process failures could damage a 3-decade relationship for a CPA firm. There was no tolerance for getting that wrong. So we really had to focus on creating this back office experience. And we used Docupace as the core technology to do it. And we were opening accounts in 3 hours on average. Advisor satisfaction with the back office was 97%. Like we really created what I think is a really beautiful, consolidated advisor experience. And Docupace was integrated with Redtail and InvestNet and National Financial. And it was this hub of connecting all this technology together. So just from a technology and operations perspective, got a lot of experience trying to drive advisor satisfaction by using tools like Docupace. The other piece, which is relevant for me, sort of as a person, is trying to think about higher purpose of business. And I tried to bring that to First Global, and I'm in the process of bringing that to Docupace. But I do believe the purpose of business is to make people's lives better. That's the reason why we exist. And it's not to say that profit isn't part of the motivation, right? Profit is what keeps the business growing and serving and doing work. But if you lose sight of the fact that the purpose of your business is to make people's lives better, bad things start to happen. So, I've had the opportunity to spend some time, with the founders of the conscious capitalism movement, I'm part of the advisory board here in Dallas, and it's sort of built on 4 fundamental principles. One is higher purpose of business. First Global, that was to enable intentional living. At Docupace today, that's to make financial planning well executed. And then the next piece is our stakeholder orientation. And I think that's really relevant in the financial services industry. The idea that your relationships with all of the business stakeholders are designed to elevate everybody's experience, right? So a practical version of this is, well, you can go take $1 away from your clearing partner and put it in your pocket by negotiating a better contract. But what if that makes your clearing partner weaker, which in turn makes your service experience for your clients weaker? Like at some point, taking money away from your partners doesn't make your financial, your experience any better for your financial advisors. So I've always known that my business partners, I may not be able to be their biggest partner relationship, but I could be their best. Right. So that's a big part of how we run the business. One of the ways we gauge success at First Global, and we do at Docupace, is just by having a very simple 4-part stakeholder model, which is being great to our employees, or being great to each other, being great to our clients, being great to our prospects, the people we would have the future privilege to serve, and being financially great. If you can make sure you've got a good allocation of time, energy, dollars, everything into those buckets, not to say they should all be 25%. Some years, some get a little more attention than others, but no one should ever be zero. If you can keep those things in balance, reward an executive team to be focused on those 4 things, the business will grow in the right way over time. And then the last 2 tenets of conscious capitalism, which are important for me, and again, learn this and practice it at First Global, is conscious leadership and conscious culture. To be focused on being authentic in your leadership and having a culture that what it stands for and you work on it. And so, I think we did that well, my last firm, and I think we're doing that well at Docupace today. And it's part of the Docupace journey. So long answer to your question, but I took 2 sides of it: what I learned about technology, what I learned about culture, and bringing that to Docupace.
This podcast is made for long answers. We like long answers, but
good.
We've covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate you being here. We've run out of time, so David, thank you.
Went by incredibly fast, Craig.
It does. It just flies by, and I like that because everyone seems to be happy and enjoy talking about these things that we like to talk about and that we like to share with our audience. And as I said earlier, I like to talk about things that I find interesting, and it seems to overlap with a certain segment of the industry, and that's good for us. So thanks a lot, David, for being here. Appreciate your time, man.
Craig, it's been a privilege. Thank you.
Hey, it's Craig again. My top 3 takeaways from this interview were the desire for self-authoring, driving a steady flow of breakaway advisors, the proliferation of targeted technology solutions for advisors, most of which you can find on Michael Keats's Advisor Tech Map, which I've been assisting him with and can be found on keatses.com. The acceleration of consolidation, which David and Docupace are helping with their acquisition of Giacomo, and the goal of a frictionless back office for advisors, 0 tolerance for operational service process failures that David is building at Docupace. And that's a wrap for this episode. Please go to our website, EzraGroupLLC.com, and sign up for our newsletter. You won't be disappointed and will receive a monthly infusion of news and insights from across the industry. And that's all for now. We will talk to you all again next time.